It seems like there are no doubts. So now we are going to move on to political factors, the next factor in the SLED category. We talked about social, legal, and economic and competitive factors. Now we are going to reach to the fourth factor, political factors. Right. So before we carry on with these political factors, just take a moment to go through the slide and try to read the points and try to understand what these points explain. Just take a few minutes. Right. So I think you have gone through the content. So now let's look at one by one. So the political environment is shaped by the interplay of government agencies, public opinion, consumer pressure groups such as costs. Now, when it comes to political environment, here it says that this political environment is shaped by the interplay of different parties, such as what? So, who plays a major role in this political environment? One thing is government agencies, right? And also public opinion matters a lot in the political environment. And also certain consumer pressure groups, such as this cause, it expands into coalition against unsolicited email, right? If you go to this link, you will see a detailed description of what they stand for. This is actually an independent organization, right? Here and identified as a consumer pressure group. This is an independent organization which aims at defending the interests of all the users in uh, areas of privacy abuse and all its forms on the internet, right? So that means they try to protect people from being interrupted in terms of their privacy, right? They try to reduce the privacy violation and abuse and also other kinds of abuse which happen over the internet. This organization, this independent organization stands to defend the rights and interests of the users when it comes to these kinds of abuses and malpractices on the internet, right? So also not only consumer pressure groups, now certain government agencies here mentioned, right? So certain government agencies, that means who are implementing the government policies to the general public, right? They are also incidentally enacting certain some legislations and also assisting businesses and assisting the citizens in getting adapted to this kind of e-commerce environment, and in order to protect themselves from internet-based abuse and so on, right? So if we talk about these political actions enacted through government agencies more, in this next point elaborates, political action enacted through government agencies to control the adoption of internet can include, right? So what sort of actions can be taken by these government agencies to control the adoption of internet? One thing is through enacting legislation to protect privacy or control taxation. That means, like we talked about earlier, certain countries, they can have their own legislations in order to protect the privacy of the internet users. Now in Sri Lanka also, we have data protection laws introduced, which are inherent to Sri Lanka, right? And also we have Computer Crimes Act, right? So certain legislations like that stand to protect the privacy of individuals when they participate in an online environment, right? And also to control taxation, right? Sometimes now, excuse me, sometimes organizations, when they are operating in an online based business, if they are operating in a digital environment, the taxation that they have to undergo might be different. So there are certain agencies who are there to help businesses to understand these taxing policies, right? To assist them with these taxation policies when it comes to operating on a digital environment. So those kinds of government agencies are present, right? And also, second thing, providing organizations with guidelines and assistance for compliance with legislation. That means this can also be used by agencies in order to provide certain guidelines and assistance for the compliance with legislation. Now, like I mentioned earlier, uh, certain legislation which are applicable for online businesses only. Yeah? So there are agencies who provide guidelines and assistance for these kinds of businesses, how to comply with this new legislation when you are running an online business, right? What sort of things you have to be more concerned about when you are selling over an online platform, or when you are advertising over an online platform, right? What sort of things that you need to keep in mind, right? So there are organizations who also provide guidelines and assistance for organizations when it comes to these kinds of businesses. So how are we going to protect privacy in an online environment, for example, right? How are you going to conduct your business without violating the privacy of the individuals who are interacting with your business? How are you going to conduct your business without misusing the data that is being given or provided by the consumers of your online business? Likewise, how you are going to comply with this legislation, these kinds of things are being provided assistance for. And the third point, setting up international bodies to coordinate the internet. Also, there are certain international bodies which are being formed in order to coordinate the internet. Now, for example, there's this famous organization called ICANN, ICANN. You can search it on Google. I will put it on the chat here as well. So search for this organization on Google. So this ICANN, this stands for Internet Organization for Assigned Names and Numbers, right? So what they do is they try to assign a unique domain name for organizations who are operating in an online platform, right? So the privacy of their domain names can be ascertained by following the guidelines provided by this organization, right? And also these unique URLs assigning, right? All these things are also being assisted by this ICANN organization, right? There are so many other services that they provide in order to control the adoption of the internet and to coordinate the online environment. You can also visit their site and see what sort of measures they have taken in order to coordinate different business organizations which are emerging in an online platform, right? So I hope those are clear to you. So this last organization, please make sure that you Google it and refer to it and read about it more as well, right? So that URL registration of businesses is being coordinated without, violating the privacy of another business and without violating the domain of another business. This organization ensures that this establishment of online businesses is coordinated well, right? Without causing a violation of privacy to anyone. So you can read more about it by visiting their site, right? So any questions so far? Anything that is not clear? Or I think everything is clear, right? If there are any questions, please let me know over the chat. I think there are no questions, right? So I think I can move on, I think, right? No, if there are no questions, please let me know. If there are any questions, I'll explain more. If not, uh, please let me know if I'm okay to move on. Right. So I think no questions. Right. So moving on. Now we are going to move on to the next factor in our SLEP category. That is the technological environment or technological factors. So now we are going to look at technological innovation and technology assessment. So one of the great challenges of managing e-commerce is the need to be able to assess which new technological innovations can be applied to give competitive advantage. That means when you are managing an online business, when you are managing an e-commerce, right, you should be able to assess what kinds of new technological innovations can be absorbed by your business in order to achieve competitive advantage. What sort of new technological trends are there which will help you to achieve competitive advantage over the other competitors in the industry? This is very, very important. Now, earlier also, we mentioned that it is important for businesses to scan the environment, right? We identified this as monitoring the environment, monitoring the online environment. So when you do this, you are able to get a better picture of these kinds of new technologies that emerge in the environment, the trends that emerge in the environment. So your business should be able to assess these new technological innovations, and you should be able to identify what technologies will dominate the market in the future. What sort of technologies will the consumers be more appealing, or more appealed to, or more attracted to in the future, right? What sort of technologies are our competitors using in the moment in the market? So based on these types of assessments, your organization should also be able to get an idea of what technological innovation you should apply in order to gain competitive advantage over the others in the industry, right? So the truth is, no one can predict the future. There are lots of examples of companies that have misunderstood the market for products. So the truth is, no organization is able to predict what will happen in the future. Well, up to some extent, you can predict, right? However, you don't know in 100% what will happen, right? So there are so many examples of companies that have misunderstood this market for products. That means when new technological innovations happen or when new products emerge in the market, there are so many examples of companies who have misunderstood these concepts of products, who have not clearly seen the future of these products, right? So they have not been able to predict the future that will emerge with these new technological innovations, right? So if organizations are unable to do a reasonable prediction about the future based on the new technological innovations that happen, then that means those organizations are greatly in a disadvantageous position, right? So if we look at the next point, the best that organizations can do is to analyze the current situation and respond rapidly where appropriate. Now, in the earlier point we mentioned, no business can accurately 100% predict the future, right? So although the case is such, so you want me to explain the second point someone says, that means this, the second point of this slide, or I think it's this point that you are referring to, right? So what does this mean? The truth is no one can predict the future. That's actually a general, just take the general idea, right? You cannot completely predict what will happen in the future. You don't know to which way the environment will change, right? Now consider the current context. Nobody knew that a virus such as corona will hit the business, right? You cannot predict it completely. What changes will happen for our business, you cannot completely predict ever. However, there are lots of examples of companies that have misunderstood the market for products. That means there are certain companies now, in the current context also, if we think, there are so many technological innovations that happen, right? Now think a while ago, we introduced this concept called pygmies, ubers, right? Where you just use your mobile device, or you use online, you use the internet in order to order a personal taxi for yourself. So was this concept there earlier? Would you even think of, let's go back to so many years, right, where you were asked not to speak to strangers, right, not to travel during the night hours, not to travel with someone whom you don't know, right? But now how have the things changed? We are actually getting ourselves, we are ordering some stranger to come and pick us up and to drop us down at home. We are trusting a stranger, a person whom we haven't communicated with ever, to provide this service to us. So that is how this scenario has changed, right? From just using a bus for public transport, we have evolved to using three-wheelers. And even three-wheelers, we have introduced this technology where we can personally use the internet to get these personal taxi services. So imagine if a business was not able to predict the market for this category correctly when this concept came, right? If a company was not, clever enough to identify that this concept of mobile taxis or this internet-based ordering of taxis will be so popular in the future, if a company was not able to understand the market for that kind of a service, then that means that business could be in a great disadvantage in the future. Why? Because now most of the people have adopted that, no? This taxi services, you have PickMe, you have Uber, then you have what else? There are so many. There are TaxiGo, there's something called Shree, and so many other services are there, right? So it has become very popular. So if you don't understand the market for products like this, when new products emerge, when new services, when new concepts emerge, right? If you're not able to understand the market, right? If you're not able to understand the consumer demand for this type of product or service in the future, right? Your organization might be at a disadvantage. That is why we say that it is very important to understand the current situation, to analyze it properly, and to identify which technology which is suitable for us to adopt. I hope that is clear. Right. So I think that's clear, right? Okay. So the third point says, so since we cannot correctly predict what will happen in the future, what is the best thing that organizations do? It is to analyze the current situation, analyze the current environment. Now, in the earlier lessons also, we talked about a concept called environmental monitoring or environmental scanning. We talked about strategic agility. I hope you can remember. When you are scanning the environment and when you are monitoring the environment appropriately, then you are also able to respond to that changes that happen in the environment rapidly. We also talked about this ability to respond as strategic agility, right? I think you remember, I hope you remember. So when you are able to respond rapidly to these changes that happen in the environment, the situations that change should be able to, you should be able to adapt to those situations. Right now, for example, the coronavirus came, certain businesses were completely shut down. Right? Certain businesses, they have to introduce new methods of selling their products and services to consumers, right? So that is how, that is actually what this point exactly talks about. And they have to be able to analyze the situation and respond rapidly, right? So but home delivery of groceries became very popular over the past 2-3 months, right? Almost every supermarket, they started delivering of online delivery of products and services. Even PickMe and Uber Eats, they opened up a new branch in their services where you can order a PickMe to buy you the daily groceries, right? So not just from a restaurant, all the grocery needs that you have for your family could be ordered by using PickMe Food or Uber, right? So those kinds of concepts very rapidly emerged. So that is why that is exactly what this point talks about. The ability of an organization to analyze the current situation and respond rapidly, right? So I hope this slide is clear to you. So moving on. Now, earlier I mentioned that there are so many examples where businesses did not correctly understand the market for products. Right now, here we are going to look at certain such examples where companies misunderstood the market for products. Right. So the first one we are looking at is from the Western Union company. I think you have heard of it, the famous money exchange company, like Western Union. So this was an internal memo that was circulated within the company back in 1876. Right? This telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. The device is inherently of no value to us. So in short, what it means is back in 1876, these people at Western Union, they thought that the telephone is actually having so many shortcomings if we consider it as a mode of communication. As a method of communication, telephone is not a good device that you can trust, and it will have no value to us. That is what they thought about the telephone back in 1876. But think how it has become important for all of us in the current context, right? You can do almost anything using your mobile device at the tip of your fingers itself. That is how much the concept of telephone has evolved up to now, right? So the next one, who the hell wants to hear actors talk? So who said this? H.M. Warner of Warner Brothers. So this Henry Warner was actually a partner of Warner Brothers. So back then in 1927, he thought nobody wanted to hear actors talk. So during which period was this now? This was when the sound was first invented, or sound was introduced to these video clips, right? Maybe you have seen in very older videos and commercial, all these things. You don't see sounds, you only see people moving, right? You can see the behaviors only. These dialogues or sounds talking, they are not there, right? So back when these sounds were introduced, these Warner Brothers thought nobody would want to hear actors talk. Now what will happen? Now if you can't hear actors talk on a movie or an advertisement, would you ever watch it? No, right? You would think that it's probably something wrong with it. So that is how concepts have evolved over the past, right? Then the next one, chairman of IBM, Thomas Watson, what has he said? I think there is a world market for maybe 5 computers. So think, this is a chairman of IBM, right? A famous mainframe manufacturer back then in 1943. He thought that there will be no world market for 5 computers. But think how much IBM has profited off right now because of the same concept of computers, right? Once again here, by actors talking, how much has Warner Brothers benefited by now, right? So likewise. So the next one also, there is no reason for any individual to have a computer in their home. This was what Ken Olsen thought back in 1977. So once again, now there is a personal computer in almost every home in the urban areas, right? And still, there might not be a market in countries like ours. There not be a market in certain rural areas, but the concept of personal computing has become so popular, right? The personal computing is evolved such that it is at your fingertips at the moment, right? So back in 1977, these people, they did not understand the market for these products correctly, right? So this Digital Equipment Corporation, which was actually famous for mini computers back then, right? So they thought that individual or personal computers will not have any market. So if you don't understand the market, like I mentioned, there's a huge risk for your business to be out of business, sometimes getting thrown out of the competition, right? But if you understand your market correctly, that can reap you huge benefits. Now, there are many examples where companies have been thrown out of the picture because they misunderstood the market. Can you give me certain examples? There are so many examples where companies have misunderstood the market for products. What sort of things you can think of? Yes? Now, what happened to Kodak? Have you, I think you have seen, or maybe you have had a Kodak camera back in your homes, right, when you were little. So what did they use back then? They had these film reels. Can you remember? There were these negatives which we used to give to the studio and wash them in order to get the picture, right? So this was the camera which was popular back then. But what happened with the invention of the digital camera? They went out of business. Why? Because they did not correctly predict the market for digital camera, this technology. They thought people will not want to embrace something like a digital camera. They thought still their Kodak camera will be popular. But what happened? They were not able to predict the market correctly, so quickly they ran out of business, and the digital cameras, they picked up. Right? So likewise, you also can think of examples where businesses have gone out of their industry because they did not understand the market correctly, right? Right, so if there are no questions, we move on. Figure 4.12 can be used in two main ways as an analytical tool to help managers, right? So we mentioned that the best thing that managers can do is to what? In this slide we said, analyze the current situation and respond rapidly where appropriate. In order to help this, right, there's a very useful analytical tool that managers can use in this figure 4.12. Now, this figure shows the diffusion adoption curve, right? Technological innovation and technological assessment. Under technological innovation and technological assessment, this figure shows how when you introduce a new technology, right, how at which stage your consumer market is, right? Now the number of new adopters is shown on this axis and the time is shown on this axis. So you can see as time goes on, the different stages that these adopters move on to, right? When it comes to adoption to technological products mainly, right? So first, it can be used to understand the stage customers have reached in adoption of a technology or any product, right? What stage is your customer in terms of your product, in terms of your technology which you have introduced, right? Now, for example, in stage 1, there are very less amount of people, the innovator stage, right? Then when you move on to the second stage, you find the opinion leaders, right? Then when you move a little bit further, you find the early majority, then late majority and laggards, right? So at a given point in time, you can assess. Now, assume that this is a mobile phone, for instance, right? So at which point do we experience the peak number of adopters? You can clearly see, right? How long will it take, right? And what can we do in order to gain this portion, or to increase this portion? Likewise, many decisions can be taken based on by observing this curve, right? So that is the first thing. Then, for example, internet is now a well-established tool, and in many developed countries, we are into the late majority phase of adoption. Now, if we take the technology of the internet, now we say that most of the people are having a sound knowledge of how to use the internet, right? They have internet access readily, and most of the people in most countries are in this stage, the late majority stage. Now this curve can be drawn to any such product, for a mobile phone, for a television product, for internet, right? For mobile banking, right? For online, for e-commerce, for any concept, this kind of curve can be drawn in order to understand the diffusion of consumers through over time with reference to a particular product or service, right? So by understanding that internet has become a well-established tool in many developed countries, how can this help a business? This suggests that it is essential to use this medium for marketing purposes. So by looking at this curve, if you can identify that most of the consumers are in the late majority period, then that means this is a very popular technology among people in different countries, right? That means it is an indication that businesses should use internet as a medium for their marketing purpose, as a medium for selling their products and services, right? So that is how you can use this diffusion adoption curve in order to fit to your organization strategies. So second thing, another use that managers can have by looking at this curve is, managers can look at adoption of a new technique by other businesses from an organizational perspective. For example, online supermarket could look at how many other e-tailers have adopted personalization to evaluate whether it is worthwhile adopting the technique. Also, managers can look at how a particular technology is being adopted by other parallel businesses or their competitors in the industry. For example, here we have taken an online supermarket, right? How many other supermarkets are providing e-tailing facilities? Or how many other supermarkets are operating as an online supermarket, which provides online purchasing of goods, right? Where customers can order online, and where the business organization provides personalized messages, personalized marketing campaigns to the consumers. Right? So you can study at which stage your competing organizations are in the industry of this e-tailing. Right? So by understanding them, you can identify whether your organization should also adopt this particular technology. If e-tailing is, for example, at a very primitive stage now, maybe there are doubts for you, right? There will be doubts for you whether to adopt this technology or not, right? But if you understand that e-tailing technology has been adopted by many businesses in the industry, then that means it's an indication that possibly your consumers also will be expecting these e-tailing services from your businesses. Why? Because most of the other competitors in your industry are also offering similar services. So I should also then be ready to quickly introduce e-tailing services through my business, through my supermarket, right? So this is how the diffusion adoption curve can be helpful for managers as an analytical tool, right? It can give an idea for the managers about the consumer behavior as well, or the which stage the consumers are in terms of a technology, and also in order to understand the behavior of certain technology in the market by looking at it from the perspective of the competitors, right? So that is what this diffusion adaptation curve tries to explain about. Right. So any questions so far? Anything that you did not understand? All clear? Is everything clear? I hope the silence means that everything is crystal clear to everyone. So I don't see any messages also saying that you want me to explain anything, right? So if there are no questions, then for today, let's call it a day. So once again, a reminder that we have uploaded our previous lectures on the LMS, where you can easily log into the LMS and download them, or you can watch them online if you prefer, right? Right, then with that, today let's wind up the class. So thank you very much for your participation and have a nice day.